Okay. Let me pull that up real quick. All right, hello everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to this WIOA Summit 2022 breakout session. My name is Heather Engelhardt. I'm with SIPDC, and I have Molly Cook also here. She is with ICSPS. We will be the moderators for today's session. Today's session's topic is building cross-title tools for American Job Centers. And this is presented by Stacy, Megan, and Nydia. As a reminder, we ask that all participants on the session have their audio on mute, and we ask that you do not unmute yourself unless prompted to unmute. If you have any questions as the session proceeds, please post your questions in the WIOA Q&A, and we will address them at the end of the session. If you feel comfortable, we encourage all participants to participate and engage with our presenters by having your video turned on, but please note that the session is being recorded and your video will potentially be on the recorded session. Following the conference, the WIOA app will host all conference recordings and resources. To be as accessible as possible with this webinar, we will be offering closed captioning. With that, we will get started with our presenters. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Afternoon. I guess it's afternoon now. Hope you're having a wonderful WIOA Summit so far. Welcome to our presentation, Building Cross-Title Tools for American Job Centers. I am Stacy Kragel, Director of Strategy and Implementation for ScaleIt, formerly Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition. So we recently went through a rebranding since we're doing a lot more than when our organization first started. So now we're ScaleIt. I'm also here with Nydia Mejia and Megan McGinty, the one-stop managers for LWIA 7, and they will be introducing themselves shortly. So today we are going to tell you a little bit about our role as the one-stop operator. I'm going to go through some background on the human-centered design and how we're using that approach in our project working groups. And then we're going to go through each of our current project working groups to share our learnings around taking this human-centered design approach to tackle projects across all the titles at the American Job Center and across our whole network of 10 AJCs in Chicago and Cook County. So in October 2020, so about a year and a half ago, Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition, now ScaleIt, was selected to serve as the one-stop operator by the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, covering 10 AJCs in Chicago and the Cook County suburbs. This was the first time that there was a one-stop operator contract offered as a standalone contract. Prior to that, the one-stop work was done mostly by Title I or a consortium of partners at the individual centers. So this really gives us an opportunity to bring more consistency around the system. So our main objectives as the OSO are seamless coordination of service delivery and service integration across the WIOA partners, and getting commitment from our partners to implement that service coordination and integration, and then delivering efficient operations that foster collaboration. Hope that is clear for everyone. With that said, we're going to give you some background about how we decided to approach this OSO work from a human-centered design thinking perspective. So we wanted to place our partners and our customers, which we consider job seekers and employers, at the center of our work. And human-centered design, or HCD, has become very popular lately in the workforce development world, including being mentioned several times already this morning at the conference. So I'm not going to go into super depth, and I'll tell you a little bit about some more resources that can help you with that. But when we first started this work about a year and a half ago, we were lucky enough to be introduced to this human-centered design concept by Virginia Hamilton and Business and Career Services at the North Suburban AJC in Wheeling. They received a grant from DCO to run a design thinking incubator, and our new one-stop team was able to participate in this group, and we really ran with that approach. We really liked it. So thank you, Virginia and BCS and DCO for introducing us to that. So today, like I said, I'm not going to go super in depth with the human-centered design philosophy. However, we are going to drop a few links in the chat so you have some helpful resources if you want to learn more. These are both from WIOA professional development resources and should help you go deeper into implementing HCD programming at your organization. One link is a webinar facilitated by Virginia Hamilton in February of this year. It's really wonderful. And the other one is a career planning policy cohort opportunity that's starting in May around human-centered design as well. So hopefully those links pop up in the chat. Great, thanks, Megan. So today we're really going to focus on how we have been running with this HCD concept in our work at WIOA 7, and specifically with our project working groups. So generally we try to mirror this approach. So empathize. We start by listening to our partners and our job seekers. And throughout this presentation, you're going to hear us talk a lot about this inventory and assessment phase that we did, where we went on a listening and learning tour, and we did these breakout sessions and focus groups. We also have regular standing meetings with all of our partners at each AJC every month. Next, define, asking questions and defining the problems. Ideate, we brainstorm with our partners to create solutions to come up with several rough draft prototypes that we want to test out. And then we do small pilots to find out which is the best solution and get feedback from all of our partners. Then once we come up with something that we think might work, we train our network and we track and evaluate our projects or our tools to make sure that we are continuously improving on them. Sorry about that. Right. So this inventory and assessment, this assessment and inventory phase. So to get the lay of the land when we first started and really understand what best practices and challenges our partners were facing already in the system, we went through this analysis. We went through this listening tour and asked our partners a number of different questions. We sent out surveys and we did observation on workshops as well. We use these insights and our scope of work to make recommendations on a list of priority projects, which led to the formation of these project working groups. So these priority projects started that we'll be discussing each one of them today in pretty good detail. This included a standardizing an AJC orientation, rolling out a customer satisfaction survey that works for virtual services, and a cross-training plan that is consistent across the whole network. Also a calendar of events for all partners that can be accessed by job seekers as well, and a unified referral process. Okay. So now we want to pause and ask a quick question to the group, and we would love for you to interact here. We want to know, how do you engage in cross-title collaboration? So we'll be asking you periodically throughout this session to share how you guys are handling these projects. And if you're part of our network and you're part of our working groups, you can share how you feel about that process as well if you were involved. I'm going to keep going. So each of our project working groups are made up of staff from the WIOA one-stop partner organizations. They can be from any title, any AJC. We've also extended the offer to a few CBOs that had existing relationships with our AJCs. And each group is focused on one of those projects that I just mentioned at the systems level. We also have a variety of frontline staff, managers, and directors participating in the group as well. And if we don't feel the right people are in the room, we're going to go and ask them afterwards as well. So there's lots of collaboration there. We want to make sure we get the right input from the right people. So all of our project working groups are at different stages and are customized to the project that we are working on. The OSO team does its best to put the groups in logical order and integrate all the projects together to help the partners keep the partners at large updated on what we're doing. So our standard monthly partner meetings or our workforce investment board meetings, we report out on the progress of each of the group and tell them kind of what's coming up next. So even if you don't participate in the working groups, you're still kept informed. And at the same time, we try to encourage new partners to join in on the fun and help us in the development of one or more of these projects. We have some partners that participate in all of them. So shout out to you guys who do that. We are always recruiting new volunteers, especially if their position directly relates to the project. And I would be remiss if I did not mention, we have an external affairs director, Mr. Robert Guzman, who maybe some of you guys know. He also had a presentation earlier today, who physically goes out to the centers and is constantly building relationships and helping us identify individuals to participate in those meetings. So we really try to have the right people in the room. And if they aren't, then we want to get their input in a later time before the full product is released. Okay, so as you can see, our current project working groups, orientation, satisfaction survey, cross-training, calendar of events, and referrals. That's what we're working on now. And then we have some future groups in mind for business services, recruitment, communication and branding, and then whatever else we might need. We can put a group together and figure out what the problems are and get to some solutions, test some of those solutions, and then ultimately land on something that works and then train across the board. All right. So here is a snapshot of number of members and organizations and core and required partners that have participated in our project working groups this year from April 2001 to this month. Like I said, we're always trying to recruit additional members. So if there's anyone in this room who's excited by this, reach out so we can get you involved. I'm gonna pause here to see if there's anything in the chat that popped up about CrossTitle Collaboration.
So nothing about that question I asked, but Lucas asked, what elements of the human-centered design would you prioritize or recommend for local workforce areas without AJCs or one-stops?
Oh,
it's a big
well,
question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh man, I think like the testing and the piloting and then testing that out has been really, really valuable. But then I'm going back to saying like, no, like the initial trying to get down to the problem and get input and feedback, it was also really valuable. So I don't know, like the whole human-centered design process, I just think is, a really good framework to tackle an issue. So I don't think I asked that directly, I answered that directly, but hope it was helpful. Okay. So now I'm going to hand it over to our one-stop managers to talk about the specific working groups in detail that they lead. Nydia?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Nydia Mejia, One-Stop Operator Manager. I'm delighted to be here today to share our process for creating the AJC orientation video and materials. But before I do that, I'd like to ask you a question about your organization's orientation. If you can go ahead and please share in the chat, was your orientation created in collaboration with all partners? While you answer that question, I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. During our assessment and inventory phase, we attended virtual WIOA orientations for the 10 AJCs across Cook County. Each agency developed their own orientation, and it varied across the board. Not all of the orientations covered all WIOA one-stop partners and services available. Job seekers at one AJC could walk away from their orientation session with a different experience than those who attended another orientation. The system can be complicated and perplexing, and as the one-stop operator, we strive to provide a clear path through so that participants can access the assistance they require. We identified a need for a standardized AJC orientation so that we can have consistent messaging. Taking a human-centered design approach, we engaged with our stakeholders to develop a welcoming, straightforward orientation without federal language or jargon. We wanted an orientation that is digestible for all job seekers, regardless of their academic level. We also added user personas to the video to assist the audience in understanding that different people have different needs and expectations. Collaboration is at the heart of what we do as the one-stop operator. We invited all WIOA one-stop partners to join us to ensure the right stakeholders were present. We had 19 members from 15 organizations across 6 titles. This was our first opportunity to develop a comprehensive orientation that clearly captured all the programs and services accessible across the network. And we could not have done it without the collaboration of our stakeholders. While collaborating with our stakeholders, we engaged with Clear Language Lab to ensure that the content is accessible and inclusive to all job seekers, regardless of their academic level. We also held focus groups with job seekers who knew little or nothing about the AJC network to collect their feedback on how we should present the information and what didn't make sense. Moving on, I'll check the chat to see if you all have any, to see what you've done in terms of collaboration on your orientation. Okay, just checking the chat. Don't see any questions coming in or responses for that. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. Here is a high-level overview of our working group's timeline. The project working group meetings are featured in red. As you can see, we went back and forth to collect input and feedback. The black section represents our review evaluation period. During this time, we met with Clear Language Lab to develop content in plain language. After our stakeholders approved the materials, we met with a production company to complete the voiceover and add music. Following that, as shown in the blue section, we rolled out the training and materials to AJC staff. The project did not end there. Earlier this month, we completed the next step, translating the video into Spanish. Our future plans include making this video more interactive and walking through a physical center. With our partners, we identified the need for these tools. The QR code can be scanned to view the 10-minute AJC orientation video. We encourage you all to watch the video at the end of today's presentation. And if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact us. The AJC orientation video is more general, system-wide information with the option to customize the next steps for a job seeker. The program slides are customized to each AJC with specific contact and program information. The informational handout is also customized and can be used as a takeaway for job seekers with clear next steps. We have all these resources available on a website where we post all of our partner-related resources for all 10 AJCs. As mentioned earlier, we are always focused on continuous improvement and evaluation. We want to focus on evaluating the usefulness of these materials and ensuring that changes at the AJCs, such as staff turnover, policy, and funding changes are taken into account to ensure that job seekers have the most accurate information to set them up for success. This includes sending out a regular survey regarding the materials. So that wraps up this project working group. I'll now hand it over to Megan to share the responses we received in the chat, if any.
Nothing really about orientation, but if you have access to the chat, I did share the YouTube link to the video. We did hear that it was an impressive effort on the video, so that's good. Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, I think that's it, unless anyone has questions that they want to put in right now. No? Okay, then I'll start. Okay, hello, my name is Megan McGinty. I'm the other one-stop operator manager. And I want to transition to our second project working group. So this is a new group focused on our second system-wide project, which was customer satisfaction survey. So I'm going to put a question in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone will be able to answer it in there, but question, if you have access and you want to answer, just tell us about how you collect and use your job seeker feedback before I share what we did with our working group. But I'll keep looking at the chat. So when we looked at the information from our assessment and inventory phase, we learned that every American Job Center in the Cook County area used the same survey prior to COVID, and it was given to job seekers who walked into the American Job Center, and then they filled out the survey either on the resource room computers or staff printed out the survey and gave job seekers paper copies. And prior to us becoming one-stop operator, those individual survey responses were shared with staff via email or during staff meetings. So staff couldn't really easily identify trends or draw conclusions from the responses. They could just look at it at face value. But in 2020, all 10 AJCs were closed to the public and participants weren't able to come into the center. So because of this, our partners could no longer use those surveys in the way that they did prior to COVID. So our partners started engaging customers virtually and held online workshops, but at the time there was no standardized effort to understand the job seeker experience. So we knew we wanted to do a few things with this project. We wanted to update the old survey and make sure all of the questions and the answer choices are easy to understand. But we also wanted to mitigate any potential gaps in data collection. And we also wanted to do something meaningful with this customer survey data. Okay, so now I'll walk through the timeline a bit. So we first convened this group for customer satisfaction survey in June 2021, started by gathering feedback of what was in place before we became one-stop operator. We used that feedback from our partners to create those prototypes and then tested them out over a few months. Then beginning in 2022, we started to plan how to scale this pilot and create and test new procedures. And then I trained staff at each AJC by the end of March. Then moving forward, when our AJCs fully reopen, we want this survey to be accessible both in person and virtually. And we plan to install kiosks at each AJC and make sure that the survey is available to all job seekers in the resource room and posted around the center with QR codes, but then also on those new kiosks. Then our goal for June of 2022 is to begin analyzing and reflecting on that customer satisfaction survey data using an interactive visual dashboard that we'll show in a bit. So the collaborators for this project within our network, we had 11 members involved in this group from 7 organizations across 2 titles. So prior to COVID, the customer satisfaction surveys were really distributed and led by the Title I agencies at each American Job Center, and they're currently sort of leading this project. But once we start to focus on the data visualization and analysis piece, we're going to start to target those other partners so they can be involved in these data-driven discussions. But then outside of our network, we were working with we continue to work with our social impact partner, Incubator. So Incubator social innovation partners have been creating several one-stop operator dashboards, and we had this vision to use this dashboard to communicate survey data. So they've been helping us from the very beginning to determine what story we want to tell with the data. And then to break down each working group meeting that led up to the pilot, in meeting 1, we set the stage by sharing our goals. And then we asked our partners about what their goals for this project was. So we tried to empathize with our partners and let them define the problem and then let them brainstorm solutions. And then in meeting 2, we used the insights from that first meeting to create those prototypes. These are like rough draft surveys And then we got feedback on those rough drafts. And then we shared our decision to create a second survey for workshops, sort of in an attempt to capture as much job seeker feedback as possible, but then to build the connection between the survey and the interactive dashboard. Then after that second meeting, we asked some Title I partners to start piloting the surveys, make them available to workshop attendees. And then as we reopen, we're working with our partners to incorporate this tool into their new normal operations at the centers. Okay, I'm going to pause here, look at the chat. Here. So some of the ways that people are collecting and using job seeker feedback, they're using satisfaction surveys and training site surveys. Some use these surveys, but haven't really gotten to the part of using that feedback. What else? Quarterly cross-training events, annual subject-specific intentional integration meetings. Oh, wow. And quarterly meetings of consortium members. So a lot of people are using surveys and collaborating, but I don't see any steps with the, what to do with that data. So we'll talk about what we're going to do with the data. So throughout the pilot, we've had several check-ins to make sure that we understood our partners' experience using the surveys. And then at each check-in, we shared our plans for that data analysis piece and then any changes that we made to the dashboard. And we're hoping the dashboard fosters some collaboration among partners. So on the right side of the screen, you can see a prototype of our dashboard before we rebranded to ScaleIt. But we keep making adjustments to the dashboard in preparation for rolling out this dashboard in June of 2022. Moving forward, we're going to test and evaluate the usefulness of the surveys and make changes if they're necessary. But in those upcoming monthly partner meetings, we're going to start to invite staff at each AJC to have cross-title discussions around and encourage staff to then bring recommendations to their own. And my internet is not.
Yeah, you just cut out a little bit towards the end.
Okay, what did we not hear?
I think most of it. So
Most of it?
yeah.
Okay, this slide, redoing it. So we had check-ins throughout the entire pilot. And then we're also discussing some of the changes that we made to the dashboard with Incubator to really drive home the data analysis piece. And this is one way that we want to foster collaboration among partners. So there's the prototype before we rebranded, so it will look very different. But in June, we're going to start using our monthly partner meetings to have cross-title discussions around best practices and sort of expand on the positive feedback that our partners are collecting and encourage staff to bring recommendations to their own teams.
Two of the biggest metrics we're looking at in this dashboard is Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction, like how satisfied are you with this service? So those are the two things that really jump out in our survey collection.
And to look at that over time, so over months instead of just looking at one
and
number.
Over different workshops at different AJCs as well. And all in real time. And we have some open-ended comments that we can share too with our partners, which is everyone's favorite. Okay. Moving on to cross-training. I'm going to share in the chat, if you can, how do you conduct cross-training? Your AJC or your organization? Sorry, clicking through. Okay, so as many of you know, cross-training and onboarding is a super important piece when you're working with multiple partners and programs across different organizations that are all under one roof. Specific to the research we did around cross-training when we first joined, we found that 61% of the cross-training that was being done was mostly in person, and mostly as a one-day event. We also found that it didn't always leave partners with a clear understanding of what they needed to know. Also, it was mostly occurring per AJC, so there wasn't much consistency across the network as a whole. So we asked and we found out our partners wanted more frequent cross-training sessions and the ability to record and rewatch the session again and use it to onboard new staff as they bring on new people. This working group, here's a little idea of who's been involved so far in this collaboration. We've had 26 members across 19 different organizations and across 10 of our core and required partners. So our first cross-training working group really started with that design thinking incubator I mentioned earlier that we were so lucky to be a part of with Virginia Hamilton and the North Suburban AJC office in Wheeling. In that meeting, we discussed reframing how we approach cross-training staff. We used small breakout rooms and Miro to virtually collaborate together and brainstorm. This meeting, we ended up workshopping a cross-training plan while identifying the important training modules and overall the need to record these sessions. So we used how might we questions and we came up with a bunch of solutions, and then we met in small groups to prioritize those solutions. And after looking at the work that we did in the Miro board, we decided to switch it up and attempt to follow the customer flow in our training modules. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means, but we wanted to keep the job seeker at the center of our training design. Before I move on, any
walked out angry or it was done?
Got someone unmuted in there. Any questions in the chat about how the room is conducting cross-training, Megan?
Michelle shared that they have cross-training monthly with different partner leaders, different partners leading each training, and this is in person.
Great. So with that, I can explain how we're really flipping it around. So historically, cross-training sessions that we heard about, or I participated in, were discussed one program at a time, where you got a bunch of information about one program. So Title I and training, Title II, adult ed services, IDS and UI. And after collecting the feedback from these project working groups, we attempted to take a different approach and mirror the customer flow when discussing cross-training. So not having one partner at a time present, but taking a more holistic approach aligned with the customer experience. So for example, like first starting with program goals of each partner and what really drives the work coming from each program. Then discussing eligibility for each partner and getting the opportunity to get a job seeker what they need right away. Like the idea of early co-enrollment across the AJC. And then moving to talking about more intensive services with all the partners if needed, and going through the training and job placement and the support services that really require more of a commitment from the job seeker. So we are currently in process of consolidating the information from the partners, making sure all the topics are covered. And then we want to integrate this information into a PowerPoint that we will show and record with our subject matter experts in the room or in a panel, going through this customer experience. And then each part, all of the partners will talk about that piece of their customer experience, if that makes sense. And we'll see if it does down the line. So yes, each training will be recorded and uploaded, and they can use them as onboarding or regular refreshers. I'm gonna move to the next project working group. We have two more. This is calendar of events. I'm gonna hand it over to Megan.
Okay, fingers crossed my Wi-Fi stays intact. So this is another project and a whole nother group, and I'm putting a new question about calendar. So if you have access and you want to share, how do you communicate with partners and job seekers about upcoming events? Like, how do you market those and make sure that everyone knows what's upcoming for the month? I'll look at it as I go through, but let's look at the next slide. So again, during that assessment and inventory phase, we found that all of our partners were updating their own calendars. They each found a platform that met their needs. A lot of different platforms, not all of those calendars were publicly available to job seekers. So we didn't have a centralized CrossTitle calendar in the Cook County network. So from the partner's perspective, each organization is doing a lot of work maintaining their own calendar. These calendars don't always have events from other partners, so partner staff really have to stay on top of everything else that's happening in their AJC and make sure they give that information to job seekers in time. Then from the job seeker perspective, it can be difficult or overwhelming to know all that's happening for the partners in one AJC, let alone the entire system. So one thing we did at the beginning of 2021, at the beginning of our one-stop operator sort of program, we created a resources newsletter for each American Job Center. So every month I send out 10 newsletters that feature the marketing materials and the registration information for the partners at each AJC, but we want to go beyond this and find a solution for the network and provide like a truly centralized calendar that will display upcoming events and allow job seekers to access them and to register for them. So going through the timeline of this project, started in fall 2020 or 2021, we met with our project working group to try and again define the problem at hand and hopefully they would help us, find the best solution for them that met their needs. And then last month, we sort of transitioned into the prototype and test phase of the human-centered design framework. And we started a pilot group with the North Suburban Cook County American Job Center up in Wheeling. And this year we want to dedicate a few months to piloting one platform. And so for this first pilot, we'll see if this platform meets their needs, see if we want to expand it and have another AJC use this platform. But we also want to have a few other separate pilots. So have another AJC, another group of partners try out a different platform just to be sure that we find a solution that meets the needs of all of the partners at all of the AJCs. And then eventually we'll be able to make a recommendation to the network and then provide this tool to partners, but also to job seekers. Then the collaborators for this group, we had 18 staff members from 13 organizations across 6 partners who participated in the meeting. So we're also exploring a bunch of different online platforms, plan to have demos and try and figure out what solution works best for our customers. So the process we went through in meeting 1, we had our working group members do another virtual brainstorming session. So we had an idea as one-stop operator of what a centralized calendar should be or what features it should have, but we needed to know what our partners wanted and what our job seekers would need. So we used Miro, had 3 breakout rooms, and each group sort of created their own wish list of must-have features, and then other features that were nice to have that I should look out for. And then in the chat, in response to that question, We use SharePoint for eBlast to those in our system, which we found during the assessment and inventory phase. A lot of emails, some internal calendars, some external calendars. Okay, so there is some cross-market marketing with other partners. And then again, individual staff still have to reach out to clients to make sure that they're aware and they can participate in the events. So we want to hopefully alleviate some of the pressure of partner staff and hopefully allow job seekers to access those events on their own. So with what we did in meeting 1, we used those wish lists to then go through different online platforms and see, sort of assess the ones that our partners are already using, see if they checked off enough of these boxes to explore in a pilot, but then also looked into some other ones online. And then following that meeting, we asked partners if they were willing to pilot, and if they were, what platform they'd want to pilot. So that was when 2 partners from the North Suburban Cook County AJC in Wheeling volunteered. I think they might be in this room. Then we invited other partners from that AJC, see if we could get more to join in. So right now we have 6 partners in total that have volunteered to pilot this first platform. So in May, our plan with this pilot is to get some of their events on this calendar, see how they can use the platform, test it out. We'll check in on their experience. And if this platform meets their needs, we may ask other partners or other AJCs to try it out. But even if this platform meets all their needs, we still need to pilot and try out other platforms. So we'll re-engage our project working group members, set up another pilot, and follow those same steps. Get partners involved, onboard them, let them test it out, and see if it meets their needs. So our goal with the pilots is to let our partners find out the solution that works best for them. And then ideally, the best solution that we can bring to the network is one that works with all partners at every AJC in the network, but one that also sort of improves the job seeker experience as well. That's all I have, unless there are questions. I'll hand it over to Nydia. Okay.
Silence as a no. Thank you, Megan. All right, so moving on to referrals. This is our newest project working group. In the chat, please share what system or platform do you use for referrals? While you go ahead and share that information, we'll move on to the next slide.
Give us some more ideas, please.
Sure. Are you currently using a specific platform?
No, not you, Nydia, the group.
Okay, so yes, we're all ears. We're looking to learn from what is being done. So moving on to this slide here. In the assessment and inventory survey, we asked if you could wave a magic wand and redesign one tool, what would it be? The top responses were referral systems in general, a more streamlined systems. The most typical methods of making a referral are by phone, email, or word of mouth. Partners also found it difficult to make a good referral and get outcomes and feedback on their customers. So it came to no surprise that this would be the most highly attended project working group. Here's a rundown of who was in the room with us. We had a total of 32 members from 13 organizations. In meeting 1, we shared a preliminary analysis into existing technology platforms that partners are currently using, as well as potential new platforms with referral sharing features. In addition, we've gathered information on local and national best practices for referral solutions. After our first meeting, we landed on our goals for the referral group and potential referral solutions to explore. In our next meeting, we plan on sharing additional learnings about referral systems, as well as pilots to explore. Moving forward, we will engage partners in CrossTitle pilot groups and hold check-in meetings to assess the usefulness of the referral system and share our findings with the larger group. Our goal is to coordinate with partners to implement a unified referral process for all 10 AJCs and partners across the network in the Chicago-Cook County area. So I'm going to go ahead and look through the chat now to see what system or platform are you using. Okay, Lucas shared that something like Google Forms for the website and a specific hard copy referral form, but he can't be too sure.
We're looking into Google Forms right now too.
Yes. Jeffrey shared Excel. I know, I see the little sad face there, Jeffrey. We feel that sentiment.
We're working on it, Jeffrey. We're working on it.
Yes. All right.
Any other questions? So basically, that's how we're using the HCD approach in our project working groups to gain input and feedback from our partners, and then putting them and our job seekers at the center of us creating solutions. So we purposely showed you a few timelines so that you can see that sometimes it definitely takes more time than you would think to get all this feedback from the right people. And there's a fair amount of going back and forth, but we feel that, you know, taking the time to go, you know, deeply involve our partners and not creating tools and solving problems in a silo is definitely worth the effort. I don't know if you want to say anything else on that, or if there's any other general questions. Maybe not. Which is fine. It's late in the afternoon. Get it? It's not the morning. Well, we'll wait a little bit longer, but here is our contact information for ScaleIt, and our Chicago citywide literacy emails will work for about another month. But if you want to get in touch with us at all or join our working groups, this is how you do it. All right, thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Stacy, Megan, and Nydia. I really appreciate all the offers of the information that you gave us. And thank you everyone for attending today's WIOA Summit session. Make sure you continue to the engagement and networking on the Whova app. We look forward to seeing all of you at the next session. Take care.